Every year, board gaming is very busy, and there's never enough time to get to all of the games. So as we are about to end the year 2024, let's go ahead and take a look back at our favorite games from 2023. It's time to re-rank.
What's up, everybody? My name is Nick.
I'm Mike.
We are the Brothers Murph, and that's right. We're going to take a look at our list from last year. If you don't know, we do a top 10 games of the year every year. We just came out with one for this one, 2024.
Check it out.
So make sure to check out that if you haven't already. What we'd like to do is a year later is talk about the previous year's games,
Yes.
And kind of re-rank them, because as it happens very often is we cannot get to all of the games. Sometimes a lot of our favorite games are games that are from overseas, and they a lot of times aren't even here yet until the next year.
There's also just sometimes we have a year now of playing a game and it's maybe grown or you know,
Waned,
lost favor or whatever. So it's nice to kind of, this list always serves a purpose of like, here's the stuff that we didn't get to that, man, it would have been on the list had we played it before we made the first list. And here's stuff that's really kind of stood the test of time. So it's really fun to look back and not always talk about the newest. But do check out our top 10 of 2024 because we'll be re-ranking that next year.
Sure will.
And in the meantime, let's get into our re-ranked list.
Hold on, just 1 second. Hey, listen, right here, come here, right here. Hey, we see you up there, all right? We see you sitting in the cheap seats, the unsubscribed seats.
Just creeping up there in the rafters like a family opera.
Watching us. You're not nearly scarred enough for that, but you do have the voice of an angel, though. But listen, subscribing's free. The seats down here are better, and they're just as free. Quit sitting up there like a pervert. Come on down here where we can see you back and subscribe. Do it! Our number 10 last year was Apiary, which might have still stayed, it's not on the list anymore, might have still stayed on the list if we had played it a little bit more. We still don't even have it, do we?
No.
No, we don't even have it.
We haven't.
Good game, though. So super excited to get it. Really, really liked Apiary, and I think this, I'm going to like it more as time goes on.
I totally agree.
But the new one is going to be the Plum Island Horror. This is a game that's kind of, at least at this point, kind of living rent-free in my head. I've been thinking about this game a lot.
This game is so fun, dude.
It's really fun.
So this is a GMT game. GMT is known for making like war games, very heavy, crunchy, dry war games. And I remember when they announced this last year, this is a cooperative horror-themed game, but very much in like campy 50s, 60s, pulp comic kind of aesthetic. And you are trying to survive this kind of like zombie invasion, and you're trying to get people out of the town of Plum Island. You're trying to get people onto boats and stuff, and the citizens are moving them around, and you are all different members of the township. You know, I was like the government, the local government, and you were like, were you the athletic club?
I was the athletic club, because you have like 5 units in your like little faction.
They had little powers and stuff like that, and so we were...
Yeah, you were like the mayor.
Yeah, I was the mayor marching people around.
I was like a tennis champion.
And certain factions and stuff that you're playing as are more suited to like fighting the zombies outright. I was much better at kind of like controlling groups of people and stuff because, you know, I'm this trustworthy source or whatever. And you kind of have this sort of, you know, never-ending wave of zombies that are making their way. They're kind of just marching through the town.
Yeah, there's like lanes of different buildings in the town, and they're just coming straight down. They don't really. There's no AI. They're just moving straight down for the most part.
Yeah, it's fairly like predictable movement. And there's just it's kind of fun because like GMT is known for making these kind of crunchier games, and it is like a. Strategically, you're trying to figure out how to, you know, survive, but it's a little bit lighter for their games in terms of like how your action points work. Everything is kind of listed on your little character, their abilities and stuff, and it's really fun. And I just like, we played it around Halloween, and it was such a perfect like October game because the theming is so strong. There's all these events that come up, you know, throughout the game every round, and they're just very much in their theme. So it might be like, you know, like a research lab has a breach, and like all of a sudden you have like an irradiated Yeti that's like running around and stuff. And I'm like, dude, that's so funny. To, like,
all
think
the
of,
event cards were very thematic. It was very
like
fun.
if this is like a bad movie that you're watching and it kind of unfolding. So it was so fun. This will be like a perennial like. You know, an annual...
twice a year, probably around the Halloween time.
Yeah, around Halloween time, but it was super duper fun, crunchy, but it's kind of pandemic-ish, where you're like, we have these things in our way, we have these goals, how do we make this work out and stuff, so it's familiar, but giving you a little bit more of a strategic experience than some of those other kind of gateway co-ops, and just like, if you like that pulpy comic, it just cannot be beat. Last year, number 9 was the art project from the Op, which is still super great.
Very good.
This year's number 9 is
That's not a hat.
like this is a hat, but that's not a hat.
This
That's
is a
a
beanie.
that's a toque if you're Jeff and Jamie
This
from
is
Foster
a
the People.
lifestyle is what
Yeah,
this
that's a
is.
gnome cap right there when you got it up like that. That's not a hat. Is a just straight up silly
party game.
memory
yeah.
party game with hardly anything going on, but it's so fun.
Pretty much, yeah. So everyone is given an object, some kind of object, like a skateboard or a cone, you know, or there were cones, you know. There was a Jimmy put it in the post.
They were cones.
But nonetheless, you're given some kind of object. It's just a very simple line drawing. Art budget huge in this game. And everyone has one of these. And so you kind of look at what it is and you kind of flip it face down and everyone kind of see what everyone has. And then on the back of these cards, there's going to be arrows. And those are going to be arrows either pointing to the right or to the left. And that's the way you have to pass it. And you pass your thing saying, enjoy this skateboard. And they go, oh, thank you. Then that's great. And then everyone starts doing that. And the problem is as things start moving, you start forgetting where things are.
Right.
But on your turn, you have to take your thing and you have to pass it and say, enjoy this, whatever you think it is. And so there can be a point where when you receive a gift, you can either say like, oh, thank you, or you can say, that's not a skateboard, and you can flip it over if you think it was wrong, what they said it was. And it seems easy, but you get a couple rotations in, and it gets, because then at that point, everyone has like 2 cards. And then, so now you're having more and more objects, and the more people you have, the more stuff there is, and it's just silly fun, where no one can ever remember anything, but that's kind of the point. And it's just one of those games that kind of like, you're like, this has no right to be as fun as it is, but it just is for whatever reason.
It's beauty and simplicity.
Yeah,
I think.
it's
like,
just so much fun.
It's just fun and funny to see everybody at the table not be able to remember
just a
what's
bunch
going
of grown-ass
on.
adults being like, was that a balloon?
Is that a freaking like shovel? What's going on in there? You know what I mean?
Something about it.
And like everyone is reduced to the same thing. It's a great equalizer, this game, and it's one that like, especially the big group, it makes the game harder, and that's what you want the game to be. The game is just silly nonsense, and you're just making wild accusations about people over like, that's not a dog, you know, that's a frog. And it's just very just fun and silly, and like, I don't know, there's just something about that where we need that in life. We need just that just simple, easy, good time, good for a laugh, and those create memories. I remember basically every time I played this game, there's been some memorable moment that I remember, and you can't say that about every game, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Last year, Nucleum was at number 8, which seems insane.
I'm surprised it was as low as it was.
I know, yeah, we must have been in a bad mood that day.
Maybe higher than this time around.
Yeah, so number 8 this time is Sky Team.
Yes.
Which we just love. I literally just wrapped up a game this morning of it on BJ.
Oh, really?
Yeah, love Sky Team so much.
I do love Sky Team. Sky Team is great. Sky Team is won the Spiel des Jahres, so shouts out to Scorpion Mask for winning that. There's an expansion coming out for it. Yeah, it's a game where it's a 2-player cooperative game where you are trying to land a plane together.
Land this bird.
Trying to land, just kind of into commercial aircraft, and there's just certain things you have to do to get ready for the landing. You have to like have the landing gears down. You have to have the flaps open. You can't be coming in too fast. You have to have your tilt right.
Then you have the radio to clear other planes out of the way.
Exactly, and so each player who's the pilot and the co-pilot, you're going to roll your dice behind your screen, kind of talk about before you see your dice, talk about like what you want to try and get accomplished this round, roll your dice, and then it's silent, and you basically just have to place your dice on the spots that you can place it, because there's only certain spots for the co-pilot, certain spots for the pilot, and there's also certain spots like the speed and the tilt where you have to place at least one die every single round. So there's this kind of like that unspoken language, you're kind of like, I put a 6 on the tilt. You need to put a high number there because, like, again, if I put a 6, Mike puts a 1, it's going to tilt way to the person who like that, and you can flip over and basically lose.
Southwest does, in fact, say probably don't do a barrel roll coming into the airport.
That's the only thing they say because they're terrible.
And, so yeah, it's like that's the only thing you got.
That's the only thing that's off limits.
And 2 free bags, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you do 1 barrel roll, those bags go.
Yeah, so there's a lot of that kind of like almost like trick taking games where there's like a lot of information based off of what I place. Where you're like, I'm going to place this high die here. I am conveying that I only have high dice.
Right.
You know, kind of like, so there's a lot of that kind of unspoken language, and you're basically just trying to land this plane, and it's so fun, and there's like all these different, like, essentially different airports you can play at.
Yeah, there's different airports which will give you all sorts of challenges. The thing that we always talk about with this game is there's so much in the box.
Yeah.
There's so much that comes with this because there's different airports that maybe are going to have a shorter or longer kind of approach. They might have times where you need to actually be at a certain tilt, not just level, at a certain time. There's other ones where there's like Heathrow, for example, where it's a very busy airport. So a couple times in the game, you're gonna get additional planes that are now in your way that you have to clear with a radio and stuff like that. And then there's also modules that add in like managing a kerosene leak. So now your fuel and how you spend your fuel is not only important for how you approach, but also for how much gas you waste and different things like that. So there's so many ways to level up the difficulty for yourself to keep this game interesting. I think it's super cool. The turbulence expansion adds like birds to hit, or hopefully not, and different things as well. And I'm just like, I just have been continually impressed by the amount they get into a box about EA, and just having fun things to kind of vary up your gameplay. I've played some of the module things, and they're really interesting, very cool. This is a game that's going to stick around. It's 2-player, which is always cool. The dice placement and having the different roles of pilot and co-pilot, there's kind of nothing to not like.
So That's Not a Hat was in number 7 last year, so it went down a little bit, but not a ton. But now in number 7 is Scholars of the South Tigris.
Yes.
We're actually going to be covering this again very recently.
We are. They have expansions coming.
They have expansions coming, so all the South Tigris games you'll be seeing in the month of January here. But Scholars of the South Tigris is really, really good still. It's just so good. It has one of our favorite things. I want to do a video about this actually, talking about like, I love shared infrastructure in board games.
Definitely.
This game is one of those games, and I feel like there's a lot of games out there nowadays who are doing like shared infrastructure.
That's why you love Brass Birmingham, right?
That's why I hate it. Yep, and that's the worst game ever made.
I tried.
You gave it a shot. But nonetheless, this is a game where you are translating scrolls. You're basically gaining these scrolls, translating them, and then putting them kind of into the Great Library is what you're doing.
It's in this kind of the South Tigris trilogy is kind of focused on this pursuit of knowledge and
which is very cool.
And innovation and this one is kind of about like learning from other cultures and things like that.
Yeah, because you'll get these scrolls, and this scroll might be in like Chinese or something like that, and then you essentially have to employ or just pay a bunch of translators to get it into Arabic, which is because you're in Baghdad. So this is where the language that is the local language. So you might have to like pay this translator who will translate it from like Chinese to like Persian, and then pay this translator who will translate it from like Persian to Greek, and then to pay this one who will translate it from Greek to Arabic. And so you have to kind of pay all these people to kind of go through all these translations.
Yeah, that's really cool.
To get ultimately to Arabic, and then you can finally put it kind of into the Great Library. But it's this interesting thing, there's this kind of shared infrastructure where you can like Mike could like find this scroll and kind of put it on the board, but then I can be the one that translates it.
Right.
And so there's this kind of shared infrastructure where you'll kind of work on stuff, but you don't necessarily need to finish that thing. It's cool if you do, but you don't have to.
Yeah, I can
really
use your
like
translators, you can use mine and things like that. We are all in this together, but you of course are trying to be the one that kind of contributes the most to this, to the growth of our culture and things like that, which is really, really neat. And it's kind of, I think when we like shared infrastructure, you and I, we both like it when it has positive player interaction. Whereas like I bring a scroll to the Great Houses, I get a benefit for that. Nick then is the one who translates and stuff, but it doesn't hurt me that you did that. We all kind of benefit. Now you're trying to make sure you get the most out of it. But I just think it's a really neat thing. Yeah. And then there's these bonuses for the scrolls themselves as you get them.
You're bumping tracks.
You're bumping up tracks, doing a lot of just resource management stuff. And especially with the dice and the way you use your dice is really, really interesting. Very cool stuff that you're doing with kind of color blending of dice and all that. And it's one that I'm really excited that we are going to be covering it again soon with the expansion, just to kind of dive even further into this game.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool.
It's gonna be great, and it might, give it even more staying power than it already has.
Last year was Force Shuffle, and this is falling off our list, the new one. I feel like you played it a bunch.
I played it so
You
much.
played it so much, and I was never quite as into it as you were,
No.
but you played it on BGA
A lot.
I don't know, like 50 times. Like, I mean, a ton.
A good handful for sure.
But now in its place is Thunder Road Vendetta.
Sure, basically the same game.
Basically the exact same game.
Thunder Road Vendetta is one that
I can see this one continuing to climb.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, every time we play it, I like it more because now we have the full Maximum Chrome edition.
But now we gotta
all
get
the modules.
We gotta get Carnival of Chaos now.
Gotta get Carnival of Chaos. You know what I mean? It's got so much fun stuff to make your game as crazy as possible, which is like absolutely what one should do.
Yeah.
You can play as a motorcycle gang. You can have a big rig, doing all sorts of stuff. You're still blowing each other up. Your car's gonna be on fire now.
Yeah. It's kind of like Mad Max, the board game in a lot of ways. It's just bananas. You have all these
Love it.
cars. Your cars get like powers. You're like shooting at each other. You're doing like sick barrel rolls over the void. It's just nuts. It's pure chaos. You got to get into the chaos.
Yeah.
And it's so, I mean, in terms of pure fun, there's not many games out there that are more just pure fun than this game.
Exactly. Like the game is designed in a way to create big cinematic moments where you run over an obstacle, it's on the ground, you don't know what it's going to be, you flip it over, oh, it's a landmine. Now you got to roll this die because you're in the air now, you know what I mean? And you're blasting off, which is like literally a thing you can do.
So often you just hurt yourself in this game.
Yeah.
And it's great.
You're trying to do something awesome and you just end up getting wrecked.
Yeah.
And that's great. And it's a game where you are trying to win the race, but the race can only end once there's, only, I think, once one person gets eliminated.
Yeah.
Because you have 3 cars. Once one person is completely eliminated, now the race end has begun. You have to get to the end first.
Yeah.
And so again, everything is dialed in toward like blowing each other up. The Carnival of Chaos, I think,
It's like a big circle.
takes it away from a
like a
race and
demolition
just
derby.
makes it demolition derby, which is like what we want to do anyway.
Yeah,
like
let's be
I just
honest.
want to blow people up.
Yeah.
It's so fun. All the different modules and stuff, and the way you can add things in, I think, pump up the game to 11.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's no way this game leaves our collection.
No.
Because the times you do get to bust it out and can play like a big full game of it, it's going to be so fun every time. Like we have, our siblings and stuff and our buddy David, like getting a night where we all get to play that game, like they'd lose their minds. It'd be so fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, just the more we've played it, this is definitely one that has just like continued to rise in our appreciation of it. And again, I think the only thing we're seeing through a lot of these games is just like fun. Just things that are super fun and silly are, kind of extra fun right now. Last year, number 5 was Sky Team. So we already talked about it on this list. We traded flying a plane for just making hooch. Number 5 is Distilled.
Distilled indeed, yeah.
I don't think we had played it
No, I don't think
by
we
the end
had.
of last year. So this is one
we
that...
got it at Gen Con the year before.
Did we?
Yeah, because I got it because you weren't there. I remember it was the first thing I got at Gen Con, and I had to carry it the rest of the day.
Maybe
and I
we'd
was really
only-
annoyed with myself for that.
That's right. Maybe we'd only played it once then or something.
Yeah, or maybe I think I had played it. Maybe you had. Regardless, it's on the list now.
Yeah, the point is I'm thinking back of like why it was on the list before because as you can see, it's not
It
like
was trash
sneaking
before.
in at 10. Yeah, now
Yeah.
it's good. This is a game where you are running a distillery and you're making different types of spirits. And those spirits might change based on the game you play, but you basically have a menu of spirits that you can make.
A flight,
A flight, yeah. I think that's how they refer to it in there, which is fun. And you are basically procuring the ingredients that you need to make these different spirits based on the type. You might need different types of sugars are what you need. You might need plant sugars. You might need sugars based from grains and stuff like that. Sugars based on high C, you know what I mean?
High C orange.
And Twix and stuff like that. You need different plant sugars. You need some yeast. You need some water. And then you can go and make your alcohol at the end of the round. And this game is one that we've talked a lot about.
Yeah.
Because there's not
that much going on.
There's not that much going on, and that's not a bad thing.
No, not at all.
But like, I remember when you were first telling me about this game, I was like, oh, is it a worker placement game? You're like, no. I'm like, oh, is there like deck building? You're like,
No.
No. I'm like, what are you doing in this? And like, you're just buying stuff.
Yeah, buying stuff,
Kinda.
and then a little bit of push your luck in terms of making
A little bit of push your
alcohol.
luck in the way you make alcohol,
Yeah.
but like it's kind of this like neat trick that they make a game that is really fun and enjoyable, despite not having that many moving
No,
parts.
not really. Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like, I can't really pinpoint why this game is so fun, but it just is. Like, it's just, I don't know. Again, it's not really doing anything super, super new or anything, but it's just, I mean, I think the theme is cool. Like, neither of us drink, so it's not even like a theme that we care about in that way, but it's just like the concept of making alcohol, making food, any of those things is always an interesting profession and stuff like that.
Agreed.
So it's cool with that, but I don't know. There's just something about this game. I love the push your luck aspect of when you're making the alcohol, you have to you shuffle up your cards of all your ingredients. You have to get rid of the top, the head. You have to get rid of the bottom, the scud, and you're left with kind of the middle, which is what you do in when you're actually making alcohol.
It's a really fun way to turn it into a mechanic.
You're not always making kind of what you think you're going to make, and I find that very fun. I don't know. There's just something about this game that's just very, very appealing, and I can't really pinpoint why that is, but I know that it is a thing.
The art style's nice,
Yeah,
you know, you can.
But it's not like, again, like crazy. I don't know what it is.
It's just got a lot of pleasantness to it. It's a well-produced game.
Yeah.
There's some variety in that you can have different types of alcohols that are
Yeah, you have
available.
special
that will-
powers and stuff.
Special
but like,
powers, yeah.
I don't know. There's something about it. This is
It's
good.
just an enjoyable game, and I feel like a lot of other people really, really love it
Yes.
as well, and it's just kind of cool. And I'm like, I don't know. It's just it does what it does really, really well.
Number 4 last year was Scholars of the South Tigers, which we already talked about, and now it is a game we talked about briefly, and that is Nucleum.
They done the old flipperoo.
Again, I'm kind of surprised Nucleum was as low as it was last time. I wonder why we hated this game so much. But now we like it, which is nice.
Yeah, it was only in the top 10 last time.
Yeah. Nucleum's so good.
Nucleum is just one that
Nucleum
we
is so
have played. You know, for us, we don't get a ton of time to really replay games over and over and over again. And Nucleum, for the size game that it is, for sure, is probably the game that we have come back to the most since we first played it last year.
Yeah.
We talked about shared infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
This is a game where you are trying to build out a network from power plants to different cities in Germany. In the base game, we also have the Australia expansion now, where you're playing it in Arizona. And,
Which in Australia, Arizona, it's a great
Australia,
time.
Arizona is, man, it's
Really
underrated.
Freaking full of uranium.
It's crazy, and kangaroos.
It's a weird
do
place.
not like it. So you're basically taking actions on these tiles. They're going to have 2 actions on them. When you play a tile as your main action, you can do both of those things, and they might be getting more tiles, taking a contract,
Getting money.
getting money,
workers.
energizing, which is going to be like using your power to actually
Building stuff.
all sorts of things. So you are getting, cities built up with buildings and stuff like that. You are building out networks because all of those action tiles can actually go down onto the board as a railway, which is really interesting. So you are kind of throughout the game
It's multi-use tiles,
shuffling your action tiles through a few times, and each tile has a different kind of like mix of actions and different bonuses and stuff, but then you are then putting them onto the board.
So you're losing them.
Yeah, so you're losing them, so you need to get more, because you need to be able to get the power from the power plant to the homes and stuff to flip them over for endgame scoring and stuff like that. There's just really a lot of things going on.
There's a lot. There's contracts. There's like public goals you're going for. There's like a ton of stuff going on.
I think for us, one reason why this game works really well is because there's obviously a lot going on. I just threw a bunch of information at you. It probably didn't even make sense.
Probably didn't.
But when you get down to this is my turn, we're on the nuts and bolts level, the actions and things themselves are really simple. The turns are very quick.
Yeah.
Because unless you're doing that main kind of energize action, which you kind of build up to, it's going to be like, okay, getting a new action tile. Okay, choose one of these ones, maybe pay some money depending on which one you take. Very quick and easy things to do. And I like that your turns are quick and snappy, but then you can build up to some big moment in the game where you've now built out some infrastructure and you go and you power up and do these things. And so the actions themselves are really simple. So I don't have to spend a ton of brain power remembering, like, how do I do this one specific thing? And instead, I can put my brain power toward, like, how do I complete this overall goal that I have? How do I make this big thing happen by doing steps A through E or whatever it might be? And those are always really fun for us, I think.
I think so. I think that's something that I've come to realize is something that both of us really, really like in games. Like SETI is our favorite game from this year.
Very similar.
And a similar thing where like each individual action is not complicated.
No.
The depth of the game is figuring out like how you do all these actions together to then get a good score. Feast for Odin's that way, where there's a lot of different actions, but most where it's like, I don't know, turn this thing turn this into a bean.
Yeah.
It's like that's the action. They're not complicated.
No.
But how you do that, the order you do them, what you prioritize, that's where the depth comes in. And this is kind of like that, where there's a ton of stuff to do. It's a big teach, but when you kind of get down to it, you're like, oh, I'll just get a new tile and I get another worker. That's my turn. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just, and I really like games like that with like simple turns, simple actions, but tons of strategic depth within that. And I found that I really, really appreciate that in games. And a lot of my favorite games have that a lot.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just good.
There's a lot of combos to be had as well. So you can, I think you feel that reward of like putting together, when you put together the thing you're hoping to do, and you've been working on this for several turns, it's very satisfying when you get to accomplish that. So I think there's opportunities to feel like clever and smart, whether or not that you win, because I never do, because Nick is just S tier at this game. Crush me every time.
I seemingly am better than you.
So good at it, dude. But I enjoy my time nonetheless because I get to do so many satisfying things along the way.
Yeah. So on our old list, we had Darwin's Journey here at number 3. It's no longer on our list, I don't think, right?
No.
Still really like it, but we definitely cooled on it a bit. And the new game, shouts out to Jamie from Foster the People. This is going to be hooky.
Jamie talked this one up big.
And it lived, at least for us, it lived up to it. This is like, I'm curious when we do our top 100 again this year, where it's going to end up for me. Because I've really found that I'm loving deduction games. I played Search for UAP last night.
You did, yeah.
Like, I love deduction games, and Hooky, man, Hooky is so good. Hooky's a deduction game, a competitive deduction game. It's kind of like competitive Wordle in a lot of ways. So if you're like word games, if you like Wordle, try Hooky. It's so much fun. This is a game where you have a class of students, and they each have a name that corresponds to the letter of the alphabet. So like Adam, Beth, those kinds of things. So A, B, A, all the way through Z. Everyone is given a couple. You're trying to do is you're trying to find out what kids are hooky, what kids are not at school, what kids are freaking out the back smoking.
There's 3 letters that are not amongst us on the table. They are gone.
And everyone gets, depending on the player count, a certain amount of letters. So like Mike might get like J, M, Z, and A, and then I get 4 other letters. So you know that those 4 letters are not. They are at class. They are present. Because you have them, right? So what you're doing then is you're asking people 5-letter words, and you're basically say like, Mike, let's say yucky. Why, what I give you? J something.
No, who knows? Just go with your thing.
Yucky.
I would say Y. How about that?
Let's say Mike had Y.
Y and
so
C.
I'm like, Mike, yucky. Y-U-C-K-Y. And then Mike then looks at his letters and then tells you how many matches it made. So that would be 2 if Mike had Y.
It'd be 3 actually. Oh yeah, 2 for Y. And say I had C.
Yeah.
So then it'd be 3.
Yes, exactly.
Because the Y counts twice, right?
And everyone goes, okay, so you write down yucky, and yucky made 3 matches for Mike. And then as people start asking each other questions, you then can start to deduce who has what letters.
Because cross-reference.
You're like, well, I have K, so I know one of Mike's couldn't have been K.
Right.
So you're like, okay, and it's just, you just go around and around, you're asking people's questions, and then at certain parts of the game, you basically have to make guesses over like what the 3 kids are, and then eventually you get to the end of the game, you reveal, and you basically get points for how correct you were in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
There's something about this game. I love Wordle, and like I love deduction. There's just something about this game of like, it's like what I like about deduction games I've realized is there's always a point in every deduction game, unless you're dumb, which I am, so don't worry about it.
Some people just go like, well, that's me. What the heck is that saying?
There's a point in every deduction game I feel like where a bunch of puzzle pieces go like,
all comes
you're
in
like,
place.
oh, so that means Mike must have P.
Oh.
Wait, and then also there's like, that means this, that means this, that means this, and there's always a point, and I feel like every deduction game where you get like that, where you're like, you start seeing the Matrix, and it's just, it hits dopamine for me so hard.
Yeah, it's a straight tap for that good.
Hookie's so good.
Hookie,
I wish Hookie could play with less, it's 3-player minimum.
3-player minimum.
That's the problem with it.
Hookie will shred your mind.
Yes. Destroy your freaking
Every
brain.
time I have played has been the most like brain-burning experience ever in a great way where I'm like, how do I do this? How do I be strategic and stuff? And it's just one that feels insanely unique. There's other deduction games, but with the word play, and again, kind of borrowing that Wordle idea of the 5 letters and stuff, you're not going to get the whole thing where if I say 3, you're not going to know which letters are where are correct, but you get some information. And the fact that you can turn that into
you can get there.
reliably guessing each other's letters, which are going to give you points, and then guessing the 3 that are missing. It's so fun. It's a great brain burn. That's the way I can, like, if you want that brain bleed, but for it to not kill you.
Brain bleeding so hard.
This is how you do it, man. Hooky is the way. So listen, sometimes we make lists and we do making boo-boos.
Make boo-boos.
Last year, number 2 was Iranian Burger Canal.
Which it probably should be in a relatively similar
I think it was my
space.
number 2 overall game ever.
It should be in the top 3 at least on this list, and we forgot to put on this list.
It's not on this list. It's now our honorable mention.
It's now our 10.5.
10.5.
Because we forgot to put on this list, but Iranian Burger Canal would have been on this list, but it's not because it's trash. And on this list now, we have the White Castle.
The White Castle is number 2. It's slid all the way down from 1 to 2.
Yep.
The White Castle is a fantastic game from DeVere that we've gotten a lot of play out of this.
Yeah, we sure have. We played it a bunch.
This is a game where you are given 9 turns and you are trying to kind of get your pieces out onto the board and do everything you can to maximize your scoring for the end of the game. So this game, really, you feel that crunch of the time that you have because you're only drafting these 9 dice. You're managing those resources. And then hopefully, if you get some resources built up, pulling off a chaining kind of combo-rific turn that will allow you to do your kind of the main actions. There's the main actions that are associated with each of the 3 types of kind of workers you can put out. You have your gardeners and your warriors and your courtiers. Your courtiers are going into the castle, and for each room they occupy, they'll be worth points at the end of the game. They also allow you to collect these cards, which will kind of fill out your lantern row and give you kind of personal actions you can do. The warriors are going onto these different fields, giving you an instant bonus when you place them, and then getting scoring based on the people you have in the castle. The gardeners give you these actions that you take when you place them, and at the end of the first and second round, you can potentially take them again. And a lot of times the big action, if I go to a gardener, it's going to allow me to do a warrior action. So now I can spend my steel and put a warrior out. Oh my gosh, that gives me these resources. So now my next turn, I can do another gardener action because I have more food or whatever it might be.
It's like you have 9 turns in the game, but you don't have 9 actions in the game. You want to try to have as many actions as you possibly can, which is why it feels real bad when you're like, this whole round I'm just getting resources. You're like, I feel that's a lot of my game.
Yeah, and so that's the kind of the crunch you feel, but I think it's really fun to try to deal with that fact. Deal with the fact that you only have a limited amount of time, and how do I be as efficient as I can? You're drafting dice and placing them. It's a dice action placement game, and they're going to be of different colors, and a lot of the rooms in the castle are going to have actions that are based on the color of die you place. So if I place the kind of coral color, the salmon color, I can do any actions that show that color in them potentially too. So of course I want to go to a room with that color die so I get 2 actions for the price of 1 turn, and you're just trying to find all of those little moments to exploit as much out of each turn as you can in the game. I think it's really fun. They have an expansion now, the Matcha expansion, which gives you a new color of die, a new action type you can do with these geisha, a new player board, and also makes it so that you still play 3 rounds but 4 turns per round.
A whole another quarter of the game,
which is nice because if you feel like that the stress of the only 9 turns is too great, having 12 turns doesn't make it a super long game or anything, but it gives you a little more time so it doesn't feel so brutal to like just get some resources.
It was a good
expansion, it's a good expansion and stuff, but the base game itself just is still so fantastic. You don't need the expansion for this game to be great. It just gives you kind of more stuff to play with, more levers to pull. But man, we've gotten a lot of play out of this one.
Oh yeah. So the White Castle was a number 1 last year, but that's trash because it's number 2. And number 1 is a game that we hadn't played by this point last year.
I had, but you hadn't.
Yeah, or
something like that. So we didn't.
That is going to be Kutna Ora, the City of Silver.
Yep. City of Silver.
That's the rest of the tagline. Kutna Ora. Kutna Ora is a game by CG. 2 years in a row, CG had the best game of the year. At least for me, at least.
That's true.
Kunor is a weird game, man. It's just a
It really is a different kind of game.
It's a different game. Yeah. This is this game where you're all kind of shared infrastructure in a lot of weird ways, where you are building out the city of Kunora, and you're basically putting out these buildings, and these buildings are attached to a certain guild, and every player has only a couple different guilds that they can build from. So like if I have like the Wood Guild, me and like maybe like one other person will have the Wood Guild, but only we can build those kinds of buildings. Right. And as you're building these buildings, the price of all of these things is going to change. This is one of those games where there's a whole bunch of different like resources in the game, but there's really only one resource because the resource is money. And anytime you need wood, instead of having wood that you then pay, you just pay the market price for wood.
Yep, and that will go up and down depending on what's going on.
And that will go up and down. Again, as more buildings are getting built, the demand goes up, so the price gets higher. But then as you build more buildings, you're then putting supply into the market, which usually means the price will start to go back down. So the prices for all these things are going all over the place, and it's this really interesting market. And I love that concept of just like, there's all these resources, but there actually isn't, because it's just money. Yeah. And it's really interesting. No matter what you're doing, you're just paying the market price. And there's also times where it's like, if the people who have the Wood Guild are just not building any of those buildings, the price just keeps going up and up and up. People are like, can you build one of these wood buildings, please? Because you're making me pay so much money for this stuff.
The thing that's really interesting with this game is that the way the markets are kind of depicted are these kind of two contraptions with cards.
Yeah.
And those will represent the kind of prosperity and population of the town as it's growing, and that will change. Again, the more population goes up, the demand is now higher for these resources, so costs go up and stuff. And if you let that go long enough, the city actually, via the cards, the city will step in and be like, you got to build this thing and force these things to be built. And I just think it's something that is, for a mid-weight kind of Euro, that's very mid-weight Euro, the ways that it kind of simulates, the needs of a township as it grows, I think is really kind of cool and makes me feel immersed in the theme of like, these things are getting more expensive. I just brought this product to the market that's flooding the market with supply. The cost has now gone down, but now I have a share of these profits. And so when I go and do income, I'm actually gaining from these industries that I've now invested in. I think it's super cool. I just think the things it does are really,
it feels
just neat.
Really different. There's really, I've never played a game that felt really anything like it.
Yeah, no.
There's games with like stock markets, there's games with shared infrastructure, there's games with all these kinds of things, but this one just puts them all together. And again, this kind of weird game, but it just works. And I don't know what it is about it, but there's just something about this game. The moment we played it, I was like, holy crap, that is different. That is built different, baby. And I really love Kunora. I think it's so much fun. It usurped the #1 spot this year.
CG's been on a tear, man.
Yeah,
it's been on a tear lately.
CG, like,
they've always been in our wheelhouse of games we like the most, but like they've had 2 years now in a row where their big game has been.
Their big
like,
Essen release every year is just like, well, what's it going to be? Because it's going to be probably in the top 5 for the year, and 2 years in a row it's been #1. So Kunora is really great. But who knows? I mean, maybe all these games are going to be trashed in a couple more years.
I mean, we still weirdly haven't played every game from 2023. 2023 was a very strong year. We have a long list of games that like were contenders for the first time around being on this list, and then the second time the re-ranking being on this list. Every game that we mentioned on last year that's not on the list now is still great. Like, we had just a really strong year. 2024, I felt, was the same way, where there's just a lot of good games, both heavy games, light games, and in between. And it's just a good time to be a board gamer. Like, it really is. I genuinely think that, like, we're in this golden age still of games being, like, freaking awesome on average, just being like dope. And that's so fun. So we hope you enjoyed our re-rankings. Let us know what we hit on, what we missed for you, which are the unsung heroes from this last year that have really been staying in your household, staying on your table. Get those in the comments below. If you've seen all these names scrolling down here, those are our dear patrons. We really appreciate everyone that can support us on a monthly basis. It's very cool. You just supporting this channel, thumbing up this video, sharing it if you like it is also a massive way to help help the channel grow and get in front of as many eyes as possible. But an extra shout out and thanks to our patrons. We have a ton of supplemental top 10s that we do over there, behind the scenes stuff, best of the weeks, talking about the things that we're really playing and enjoying kind of on a week-to-week basis and more over there on Patreon. Do consider subscribing to that today.
Yeah.
And shoot, I guess we'll see you in the next...
a couple of years. We usually, every 5 years, we usually do as well.
Yeah, I guess the next
couple
time,
years, we'll come back to this list.
Next time we talk about 2023 will be in 2028. And I'll look forward then to see what sticks around. 'Cause that's a real, that really tells the test of time, like what games are great. But anyway, have a great day, y'all.
Thank you so much for watching that hot top 10. We really appreciate y'all so much. Want to give a big shout out to our channel sponsors, Garfield Games, Board Game Geek, Restoration Games, and Arctic Tables. And a big shout out to our sponsor for January, Evan Diesel, who said, "Do your worst, daddy." And we said, "Ooh, you got to come in this month."